There are several indications that the border standoff between India and China in Doklam area of Sikkim is likely to wither away and not get into a military sort of conflict. It may be a good time to also look at something that is very conspicuous: the stoic silence of many South Asian neighbors of India in an area where India considers as the backyard or the sphere of influence. It is quite possible that the investments and the military to military cooperation of China in many of these countries is probably finally paying off, in the sense that they have not taken any stance in favor of or against either of the countries involved. Reza, let's start with Sri Lanka. The appearance of two submarines and a Navy ship in a Sri Lankan port, and the fact that Sri Lanka has leased that port to China.
The appearance of the Chinese submarines in Sri Lanka and the continued efforts by the Chinese Navy to establish a presence in Sri Lankan waters is something that has worried India a lot. And that was the reason why India expressed reservations about the Hambantota port, and also the reason why the final agreement that was signed between China and Sri Lanka states that the port will not be used for any military activities.
The where the investment happened in this port is telling, because what happens is that China invests in these in form of loans, and then these ports and other infrastructural facilities do not perform well, and the countries that are taking the money from China end up being sort of indebted to China. This is the same format that is being tried in the form of the China-Pakistan economic corridor also. Right?
Let's be very clear about one thing. There's possibly no other country which has wielded its economic power in such a manner. I mean, China has very deep pockets. It's willing to give loans that, as you said, indebt these countries, make them feel indebted to China, to Beijing. So you have CPEC. No one really knows whether CPEC will be successful, and yet China has been willing to pour billions of dollars into CPEC to create infrastructure, power plants, and all that is happening in the process is China is making Pakistan more and more dependent on it.
In the case of Nepal, which again has been considered as one of the spheres of influence of India, there have been governments which are either pro-China or pro-India. The current government is being considered as pro-India. The Prime Minister Sher Bahadur Deiba is to visit India, but that has sort of created a lot of tension in Chinese, and the Chinese are actually sending a vice premier to sort of gauge the mood and probably to also take Nepal into confidence, right?
There's a lot of effort being put into improving relations with Nepal by China. It is very clear from the way it is sending this vice premier to Nepal just before the Prime Minister visits India. Very clearly they are trying to lobby Nepal with an eye on the Doklam standoff. And as long as the Doklam standoff doesn't end, and China still has open border disputes with countries such as India and Bhutan, I think it will continue with these efforts to try and lobby with India's neighbors, maybe entice them with soft loans and things like that, to try and wean it away from Indian influence.
While India did not take part in the One Road, One Belt initiative of China, what was really surprising was that most of the South Asian nations, except for Bhutan, actually participated in it. And Myanmar and Maldives are the countries that have billions of dollars of investment coming into their countries from China. So basically, it appears as if Indian foreign policy establishment has either failed or has not been able to expect this sort of a deep involvement of China in these countries.
You also should remember that China has been trying to make inroads into Bangladesh. It's another country where it has offered to sell, high-end military equipment. So yes, China has very deep pockets, as I mentioned, and it's trying to use its economic power to, to establish a presence in all the countries around India. This move seems primarily aimed at curbing any effort by India to emerge as a more powerful player, primarily in this region. So I wouldn't call it an encirclement, but it's an effort by China to build a more established presence in India's immediate neighborhood, so that it can play a larger than necessary role in influencing and shaping the politics of this region.
And I think that these countries are also trying to balance out the influence of India in the region with the influence of China, sort of balancing it out. So I think if you really go in the past, part of the blame should go to India also, in the sense that it seemed to have done some sort of overreach.
Well, India has played a very important role in shaping several of its the politics and even the history of several of its neighbors, like for example, let's say Bangladesh. But at the same time, many of India's neighbors have also complained that India plays an outsized role in their politics. There have been accusations of India meddling in the politics of these countries. So it's not really surprising that they may turn to a country like China to sort of balance things out. But in the long run, I think even all these countries understand that the Chinese influence doesn't necessarily work to their advantage. They may be able to get some sort of a counterbalance against India, but in the long run, China isn't exactly a helpful presence.
The countries in the South Asian region seem to be ignoring the historical, cultural and political linkages that they had with India in trying to attract investment from China, etc. But it may be a good thing to remember what somebody said at this point, that the Chinese are Chinese first, businessmen second, and your brothers third. Who said that? A Pakistani general. Thanks for being here with us.